right, for question 5, we're asked to find and simplify the derivative of a function defined in terms of a definite integral. Namely, we're dealing here with the function f of x equal to the integral from the square root of x to 3 of the function 6 times t to the 5th divided by the square root of 4 times t to the 4th minus 9. And if you're being asked to find the derivative of a function like this, it's almost certain that the intent is not for you to actually evaluate that integral. And while that may not be an impossible integral to work out, it's certainly a very difficult one. No, instead, we want to apply the other part of the fundamental theorem of calculus, the one that's specifically designed to let us differentiate functions of this sort without working out the integral first. But that part of the fundamental theorem of calculus does have a couple of requirements. In particular, it specifically wants the bound that has the variable in it to be the top bound. So the very first thing we need to do here is we need to rewrite this function by inverting those bounds, which means we need to add a factor of -1 in front. And the integrand itself then doesn't change. The other requirement that we have to bear in mind is that the fundamental theorem of calculus really expects that upper bound, the bound with the variable in it, to just be x. And if it's a more complicated function, that's okay, but it means we really need to combine the fundamental theorem of calculus with the chain rule, with that function, in this case, the square root of x, operating as the inside function for the purposes of the chain rule. So that means that when we differentiate here, well, of course, we'll get that -1 out front now, because that's just a constant multiple. If that was just x, we'd put it everywhere there's a t. And so we do the same thing with the square root of x. So we'll get 6 times root x to the 5th divided by the square root of 4 times root x to the 4th minus 9. But that's the derivative of the outside function, which is only part of the chain rule. The chain rule says that we then need to take that expression and multiply it by the derivative of the inside function, in other words, by the derivative of root x. All right. So let's simplify this part as we work out that other derivative. So that's -6 times x to the power of 5 over 2 divided by the square root of, that will be 4 times x squared minus 9. And then the derivative of the square root of x, or x to the power of 1/2, we know that's 1 over 2 root x. And so we can do a little bit more simplification here. 6 over 2, of course, is 3. And x to the 5 over 2 divided by the square root of x, or x to the 1/2, that would be x to the power of 5 over 2 minus 1/2, which is x squared. So this then becomes -3 times x squared divided by the square root of 4x squared minus 9. And that's all we have to do to get the derivative of this function f of x. We'll move on to question number 6 in the next video.